Hello, I'm Dan Dick. For the month of August, Tales from the Mennonite Heritage Archives is in summer rewind mode. You're invited to re-enjoy a few of our more popular episodes while we work on new stories for you beginning in September. Hello and welcome to Tales from the Archives. I'm your host, Dan Dick. Welcome to this week's episode about fascinating people, places, and events from the Mennonite Heritage Archives. Last week, you heard about Klaas Brandt's behind-the-scenes work on the Show Lake Aqueduct. This week, I'll share about another project Klaas Brandt had a hand in, building Steinbach's first airplane. Before we go to our story for today, we're going to hear Bury Me Beneath the Willow by Winkler's own bluegrass band, the Dry River Boys. This album is titled Blue Road and is part of the music collection at the Mennonite Heritage Archives. Neither the CD nor the jacket reveal a publication date, so if any of our listeners know when this CD was released, please email us at info@mharchives.ca.
My heart is sad and I am lonely for the only one I love. When shall I see her? Oh, no, never, till we meet in heaven above. Oh, bury me beneath the willow, under the weeping willow tree, so she will know where I am sleeping, and perhaps she'll weep for me. She told me that she dearly loved me. How could I believe it untrue? Until the angel softly whispered, she will prove untrue to you. Oh, bury me beneath the willow, under the weeping willow tree, so she will know where I am sleeping, and perhaps she'll weep for me. Tomorrow was our wedding day. Oh God, where can she be? She's out a-courting with another, and now no one cared for me. Oh, bury me beneath the willow, under the weeping willow tree, so she will know where I am sleeping, and perhaps she'll weep for me. Oh, bury me beneath the willow, under the weeping willow tree, so she will know where I am sleeping, and perhaps she'll weep for me. So she will know where I am sleeping, and perhaps she'll weep
That was Bury Me Beneath the Willows by Winkler's Own Dry River Boys. Now back to our story. Building an airplane is an impressive feat. So impressive, in fact, that Steinbach's Carolina News has printed the story of the town's very first plane numerous times. But like Klaas Brandt's work on the Shoal Lake Aqueduct, Brandt's contributions to the airplane remained behind the scenes. In 1931, Steinbach brothers-in-law Bill Wiebe and Frank Sawatsky wanted to build an airplane. Home-built planes were all the rage across North America, and Steinbach was no exception. The brothers struck gold when they found a magazine advertising plans for a home-built airplane called the Pietenpol Air Camper. Frank and Bill worked in a garage owned by their father-in-law, J.R. Friesen. Friesen brought some of the first automobiles to Steinbach about 20 years earlier and had the means to supply the Model A Ford engine the plane needed. As Frank pointed out to his father-in-law, a car engine that can also power an airplane is a great selling point. The possibility of selling home-built airplanes seemed full of potential, so Friesen made a deal. He would bankroll the project, and Bill and Frank would do everything else. Even with funding from J.R. Friesen, this was the Great Depression of the 1930s, and resources were scarce. Rather than buying the plans they had seen in the magazine ad, Frank and Bill decided to draw up their own plans. One story says they used a magnifying glass to get as much detail as possible from the magazine ad. This was an enormous undertaking for two people working in the back of their father-in-law's garage. But Bill and Frank had help from Frank's close family friend, Klaas Brandt. By now, Brandt had over a decade of engineering experience. After his work on the Shoal Lake Aqueduct was completed, he went on to work as a tool maker at the Great Falls Power Plant on the Winnipeg River, and later became a land surveyor for the province. His engineering mind was always switched on, constantly solving problems. In 1931, Brandt turned that brainpower to airplane building. Based on the magazine ad for the plane, Brandt drew up the new plans in incredible detail. These drawings can now be viewed at the Mennonite Heritage Archives thanks to a family donation of Klaas Brandt's materials. In January of 1932, Bill and Frank got to work. Almost every part of the airplane had to be built by hand. A propeller was fashioned from white ash wood, as were winter skis. Motorcycle wheels were used for summer landing gear. The project quickly became the talk of the town. Bill and Frank even had to start locking the garage door while they worked to stop curious onlookers from crowding in. Not all of those onlookers were optimistic. In a 1957 Carolina News article, Bill remembered that in anticipation of a failed flight, his pastor came to the garage one day, somberly asking what Bible passage he should read at Bill's funeral. A few years later, that same pastor asked him for a ride in the plane. It seems that all of Steinbach's attention was focused on Bill and Frank, overlooking Klaas Brandt entirely. And he probably liked it that way. Brandt's grandson Dave remembers his grandfather as a reserved, humble man.
He basically ran away from home when he was still a teenager. And he decided he was not going to live like those farmers out there anymore. And he was going to be a city person, and he wanted nothing to do with the farm. And so he came to Steinbach and got a job. And that's where he started also his engineering education. He was seldom one to offer opinions and all that kind of stuff on his own volition. When he and my dad were in partnership in the business, it was a manufacturing business. And the leadership roles were sort of divided up along the lines where my dad was the outside person. He did the sales, he did the relationships with customers and all that kind of thing. And my grandpa was the shop guy. I never saw him actively as a draftsperson. And so I've looked at his drawings and always was impressed with the exactness and the freehand art that it included. He was a smallish person. My dad was about 5'8" or 5'9", and Grandpa was shorter than he was, so I'm guessing he was 5'7", something like that. He was always very careful about his weight. He was never overweight. not particularly skinny, but I'd say just normal, comfortable kind of weight. And when I knew him later in his life, he had what I think today we would call type 2 diabetes. It was not early onset. I mean, he had it only as an adult, but he could control it with diet. He was very, very careful and strict with himself. He was self-disciplined, I think sometimes to an extreme.
Klaas Brandt's satisfaction came from a job well done, and he would get that satisfaction from the Steinbach Pietenpol airplane. In April of 1932, the plane was inspected and registered with the Department of Transport. But not everything went smoothly with that process. Inspectors found 30 deficiencies that required correction before they would approve the aircraft for flight. The trio got to work. Numerous parts such as bolts required strengthening, which meant using heavier materials. Heavier materials required a more powerful and lighter engine, so the pair souped up the motor by modifying the fuel system to squeeze out a few more horsepower and made lighter weight engine parts to replace some heavy cast iron ones. The Pietenpol's first official test flight was scheduled for May 2nd. Farmers left their fields and schools closed as the entire town of Steinbach gathered to watch Frank Brown, a World War I pilot, inspect the plane before getting into the cockpit. And then the plane took off. As the crowd cheered, the Pietenpol circled in the sky before landing. It was a resounding success. But according to at least one account, this was not the first test flight. Hoping to avoid crowds and public embarrassment if the plane didn't fly, Bill and Frank attempted a test flight on their own, in secret, with Frank in the cockpit. It was not a successful attempt. Frank was not an experienced pilot, and in his attempt to get airborne from a stony cow pasture, he destroyed the propeller. But this was just a small bump on the road to triumph. Bill and Frank quickly made a new propeller in time for the official test flight on May 2nd. Frank Sawatsky became the first licensed pilot in Steinbach and went on to successfully fly the Pietenpol, as did Bill Wiebe. The pair flew as far as Kenora and barnstormed the Steinbach countryside, often landing in hayfields. The Carillon News recounts plenty of mishaps. Wiebe remembered a close call returning home from La Broquerie and landing in gale-force winds back at home near Steinbach. The fierce wind slowed the airplane's ground speed to just 10 miles per hour as he touched down. Sawatsky remembered tearing the skis off the plane one winter while landing on hard, bumpy snowdrifts. After the Pietenpol took to the skies, air shows became hugely popular in Steinbach. Building on their success, Bill and Frank built more airplanes in the 1930s. Together, Frank and Bill ended up making 4 Pietenpols, as per a story in the Carillon News published in 1962. So what became of the pair's first airplane? According to that story, it hung in the J.R. Friesen warehouse in Steinbach for years. It was finally sold to 2 airmen from Winnipeg for the princely sum of $75. They planned to fix it up and make it airworthy again. Sadly, before the buyers could pick up their flying machine, the warehouse burnt to the ground, taking the airplane with it. Although J.R. Friesen's dreams of a plane-building business never took off, the story of the Pietenpol is an important part of Steinbach's history. Photos of the Pietenpol airplane as well as the plans drawn by Klaas Brandt are held at the Mennonite Heritage Archives. To see some of these images, visit www.mharchives.ca. Next week, I'll chat with Dale Hildebrand about his new film, Where the Cottonwoods Grow. The work commemorates the Mennonite migration from South Russia to Manitoba in 1874.
Hello, I'm Archivist Conrad Stace. The Mennonite Heritage Archives is a community-supported memory center that relies on donations from community members like you. To support this program and the preservation of Mennonite history, visit mharchives.ca and click on Support, or give us a call at 204-560-1998. Thanks also to our partners, Canadian Mennonite University, the Centre for Transnational Mennonite Studies, Mennonite Church Canada, and Golden West Radio.
That's all for today's episode. I'm your host, Dan Dick. This episode was researched and written by me and Kaylee Dick. Tales from the Archives will return next week with more stories about people, places, and events from Mennonite history. Thanks for listening.